Hey, I'm Braxton Hunter, and I'm so glad you found this channel. However you found it, I hope you subscribe. I hope you share this video. But today, I'm talking about something a little different than we usually cover on Trinity Radio, and that is a new podcast that just launched that I created with a friend of mine, with input from a friend of mine, and a whole bunch of super cool people who helped me make it by telling me their stories. And that new podcast is called Supernatural Stories. Call it what it is. And I didn't really come up with this notion. I thought it was a great idea, but someone helped me with this idea. In this episode, I'm going to play for you the first several minutes of this podcast right here on this channel in hopes that I'm so confident you're going to like it, that I'm doing this in hopes that you'll want to go and listen to the rest of it. All right. And so to help me with this, I want to introduce the show, and we're going to talk a little bit about it for just a minute. A long-time friend of mine, more than probably any collaborator that I work with, and that is my high school friend and current colleague at Trinity College of the Bible and Theological Seminary, Andrew Armstrong. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have him here because I've been trying every way imaginable to get Andrew. I call him Andy. Okay, I'm just going to say I call him Andy. He would want you to call him Andrew probably. Can they call you Andy?
Andy's fine.
All right, Andy's fine. And he's been a friend since high school. And when I moved to Evansville, Indiana to teach at Trinity, I didn't have any friends here, so I just imported friends from Tennessee. And but he's here now and has actually been on Trinity Radio once before. Before it was a video version, it was just an audio podcast. Do you remember that episode?
Yeah,
Andy?
I do. Yeah, you had me read that book where that kid went to heaven and talk about it. Because I'm into near-death experiences as well.
Yeah, near-death experiences and anything supernatural, really. Mm-hmm. And we don't have to have you talk about them, but you have had some experiences, let's just say, that you could doubt in retrospect, but that you personally believe provide some reason to think you encountered something supernatural. Is that a fair way to say?
Right, that's correct, yeah. I mean, mainly I just have always had, I'm into apologetics as well, and I've always had a fascination with any type of supernatural thing, from healing, from, people that are in the occult, from just, somebody feels like, something supernatural happened in their life, and that's always really interested me, so I've always, gravitated towards those testimonies and those stories, even when it comes to, like, those TV shows, where somebody will be retelling, a specific story. I'm into those as well. So
yeah, I remember when I first got into apologetics, which for those that don't know is Christian defense, giving reasons why we believe what we believe and responding to what people from other worldviews, Muslim, atheist, whatever, might say in response to Christianity, why it's wrong. And apologetics is a discipline where we defend Christianity that way. And I remember when we kind of got into it together. Mm-hmm. I'm a professor who teaches this stuff, but Andy knows almost as much as I do about this, and more probably about other aspects of it. And we used to sit on my porch or in a hot tub and just talk about the Kalam cosmological argument and miracles and near-death experiences. And I remember early on, like, near-death experiences are more popular now to talk about, but I remember early on, we would sit on the porch and talk about it. We're like, man, I wish more people would take this stuff seriously. So, but all right, about several months ago, I don't know how many months, January, it was probably January of this year, you and I were sitting in the very spot we're sitting in right now. You were sitting there. For those that don't know, we're in the same room, and he's sitting over there. I'm sitting over here. It actually doesn't work because when I look that way, I'm looking at him, and I should have moved the windows. But we were sitting right here, and we were talking about people. It's crazy. People don't think that these supernatural stories happen, that this is all stuff that happened in the Bible, and it doesn't happen anymore. And we were talking about that, and you kind of, I don't remember exactly how it came up, but this was your idea, basically. Talk about it for a minute.
Well, I feel like, I listen to, you also listen to Radio Rental, and I listen to Odd Trails and a few other things. And of course, and then it's a very similar thing to what we're going to do. We may be going into a little bit more explanation, talking about it here in the future. This first episode we're putting together, see how that goes, see how people respond to it. But what I wanted to do was from more of, because, a Christian angle from my belief, I always wanted to hear those stories about more of the miracles, more of something that, a person that comes from that angle. You hear all kinds of different stuff on some of these other podcasts. And so, I don't know, I guess we were just talking about it, and we were like, well, we could do this, or we could do this, or we could contact this person. Got kind of excited about it. We were like, why don't we just try to put something together and see what happens?
Yeah, the idea was, I noticed when I was reading some of Keener's stuff, Craig Keener, who wrote 2-volume work on miracles, as well as Lee Strobel's book on miracles, The Case for Miracles. I noticed that I was just impressed when I took this to be just a regular person, as I was when I heard that this is some philosopher that had this happen. We instantly in the academic world want to give more credibility to those kind of stories where somebody who has some street cred as a thinker claims to have experienced something like this. But man, if you just listen to somebody, we as human beings, we can be fooled. That's true, but you kind of can get a beat on someone when you're looking at them or listening to them bare their heart. And so that's an important part of this first episode, and probably will be every episode, is for me to or you to try and explain, how's this person seem? When I turn on the webcam and I'm talking to them, or I meet them in real life, how did they seem to me? Did they seem trustworthy? Did they seem reliable? What are there things about their life? In the first episode, which we're going to play for you just a bit of in a second, I do that at the beginning. She's talking about Ashley is the person we're interviewing there, and she's talking about how she's had. She's a mother, and she's got this online business, and she's got this husband that she's crazy about, and she's a normal person, and that's part of this is you go out and you find people like that. She's not looking to tell her story. I found her. She didn't start a YouTube channel and go blasting this out there, so she's not looking for attention out of this. And I thought that was really cool, and that's really been true of the people we've interviewed so far. Well, is there anything else you want to say about this, Andy, before we let them listen to the first few moments of the show?
No, other than that, yeah. I mean, I just had a situation the other day where I was trying to talk to somebody, in an apologetic way, and this is where it kind of went to. Like, I was talking about something, but he brought up a supernatural kind of experience, that led us to talking more about Christianity. And so I do feel like there is, this could be something that you share with somebody, and it's able to open the door. Because a lot of people, that's the thing, is like a lot of people they're not sure if they're going to get ridiculed or if they're going to get, talked about. But if they're not, there's so many people out there who've had some type or know someone really close to them that have had some type of supernatural experience. And that can just be an open door, to sharing the gospel, to talking to them further about Christianity. And so that's something that happened to me just the other day that I was telling you about. So
yeah, and I want people to notice something interesting about this. Some of these things, I mean, these are anecdotes, and some of the stories there are things that have been checked. But these are anecdotes. These are things people are talking about that have happened to them. We can't check a lot of these facts. And the deal you kind of make when you talk to someone and take their personal story like this seriously is you get a real quick picture of what the supernatural storyteller, I think that I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to call them that, the people on the show. You get a real quick picture of what the supernatural storyteller says happened and maybe strongly believes happened. But so many of these details you just can't check. Well, that's just the way this show is, and it may irritate us sometimes, but I think there's value in it, especially when you consider the number of claims like this that there are. I wanted to say that Mike Licona, who is a just world-class historian and scholar, and I sent this to him last night. I haven't even told you this, Andy, but I sent this to him last night. And while I was at church teaching a college group, Mike Licona sent back to me, and he was like, "Oh my gosh!" He's like, "I'm blown away by this." And he said,
he'll love it.
And he said, "I'm sending it to Dale Allison."
Oh no!
He's like, "I want him to see that Dale Allison's also a well-known scholar." And then he posted this on. Now, I hadn't even it was live. It's live right now on Apple Podcast or wherever you get podcasts. But But I don't think I had told anyone. I was just kind of sending it to him to say, hey, check this out.
Yeah.
And he got so excited about it that he made a Facebook post and linked it and said, check out this brand new podcast by my friend Braxton Hunter. This promises to be very good. Listen for 8 minutes and decide whether to continue.
Oh, nice.
Now that's powerful because
That's great.
I look, well, what happens at 8 minutes? At 8 minutes, we get through the first section of Ashley's story that I think is really, really powerful and really strong. And so if it's good enough for Mike Lycona, it's good enough for us. So we're going to play you now the first 8 minutes or so of the first episode of Supernatural Stories. I believe, Andy believes, Mike Lycona believes that if you listen to those 8 minutes, you're probably going to want to keep listening and subscribe to that podcast. Do that. And listen, hey, if you like the podcast, if you enjoy it when you're listening to it, it would really help us out as a new podcast if you go over to iTunes and give us a 5-star review and mention a couple of things that you like about the show. That really, really, really helps, especially now since we have none. We have no reviews. So that'll be really helpful. All right, Andy. Well, with that, I guess welcome to the premiere of a segment from the new podcast, Supernatural Stories. Warning. This podcast contains descriptions of alleged supernatural events that may at times be disturbing to some listeners. Welcome to Supernatural Stories. I'm Braxton Hunter. For the past 10 years, I've been a seminary professor talking about supernatural events mostly in the course of theological, philosophical, or biblical discussions. But just because that's how I usually interact with these ideas doesn't mean I'm not also a normal guy with an interest in provocative and mysterious accounts of the paranormal. Every now and then, someone in the religious world will tell you something. Maybe they can't prove it, and so it won't be on the evening news. But for them, their story doesn't have to be. Once something supernatural happens to you, it would seem, you just know. Well, I wanted to lay aside the theology and philosophy books for one project and just listen to what those kinds of people have to say. These are their stories, and it all begins in this episode with a young woman named Ashley.
I grew up with a lot of spiritual confusion. My mother still to this day frequents psychics and those types of, I don't know how you would call it, like metaphysical, interested in those esoteric type things. And as a teenager, I had recently come out of some very serious sexual abuse from my past. And I was very angry. And I took out this rebellion or this anger I had, and I basically buried myself in the occult. Not even sure I really believed in it, but I just felt like drawn to this type of thing, especially since I was kind of raised around that in this type of environment.
I'm Braxton Hunter, and this season on Supernatural Stories, you'll hear real people describe what they think are paranormal or supernatural experiences. The demonic, the angelic, the bizarre, and the miraculous are all covered as I track down men and women from all walks of life and academic achievement, from scientists to students, and from the young to the old, from those who began as skeptics to those who always believed. All kinds of people have supernatural stories. I hope you'll stick with us and hear them all. But for today, let's get back to Ashley. I was put into contact with Ashley in early 2022 by some mutual social media friends who all assured me that I needed to talk to her. I reached out and we began discussing all that Ashley had been through. On the video call, I sat before a young woman with a pleasant smile and a genuine attitude. She was jovial, but calm and self-assured. I would learn that she has a husband, and he shows up later, we'll come back to him, and is a mother in addition to running her own business online. I mean, she's respectable, successful, sensible. Not exactly that windbag who's always trying to one-up everyone's anecdotes. If it's not clear, I'm saying she's believable. I think she would strike you as believable. And note, that doesn't mean what she describes is real. Sincere people can be sincerely wrong. But it's worth noting, Ashley comes off as very authentic. And also, you'd like her. And if not, what's wrong with you? She's great. And all that makes the story so much more interesting. With an upbringing around the occult, a young Ashley was set up to experiment herself.
I remember being probably 18 years old, 17 or 18, and I bought tarot cards. I started going to a psychic, and I also did a little DIY thing. I went to Home Depot and I bought a piece of wood and I painted a Ouija board. To be honest, they sell them at Target. You know, I thought it was kind of a fun party game. I didn't really think that it worked originally. I thought it was kind of, just for fun. At first, I thought it was kind of just for shock. I'd bring it with me to slumber parties and stuff like that. I didn't really think much of it until I started having actual encounters with things that I couldn't explain. And I think that kind of took the atheistic belief from me, or agnostic, I think you would say, because I'm not sure I would have denied it at that time. But things started getting real really quickly for me. I, at points, was doing automatic writing. I was opening myself up because I thought it was a joke at first, like, oh, whatever. But then once I started getting actual answers that other people were verifying for me, I remember I brought this Ouija board over to this girl's house. And she told me she didn't believe in it. So I said, okay, well, let's see if it works. And she said, okay, well, I don't want to put my hand on, I think they call it a planchette, I'm not sure what they call it, on the thing that moves around so you can spell out the words or whatever. She said, I don't want to put my hand on it because I don't want to subconsciously influence whatever it's going to say. And I said, that's fine. So she flipped the board upside down so I couldn't easily navigate it or spell things. And she had me look away. She was very specific with how she wanted me to do this so she could test if it was real. And she said, I'm going to ask it one question that I know you don't know the answer to, and I want to see what happens. She said, how did my uncle die? And of course, I didn't know the answer to it, but it spelled out the word drown. And she started crying. She started panicking. And I'm like, what? And she said, my uncle was a scuba diver and he had an accident where his tank went out and he drowned. That girl never would do it again with me. She's like, don't ever bring this here again.
So, haven't Ouija boards been disproven?